Hello and welcome to the Print's interactive broadcast on the assembly elections. Today, Abhishek and I will be discussing how the Aam Aadmi Party has captured Punjab. Abhishek, just to run the numbers by you right now, counting's not over, but out of 117 strong assembly, the Aam Aadmi Party, which is known to be an outsider party, at least in the state, is leading according to the Election Commission data in 89 seats, whereas the SAD and the Congress, which are the two main parties historically right now, are trailing by large numbers. How do you view these results as of now?
Yeah, it's very clear that AAP is leading in a thumping majority of seats, and 90 out of 117 happens to be a huge number. It's not surprising again in many ways for people who have followed the entire party's campaign and the ground reports from Punjab. If you see, I'll just put it in one word. You can call it Badlav has been the buzzword in Punjab. People in Punjab wanted an alternative. They have given chance to the Akalis. They've given chance to the Congress. The state has had the Akalis for 10 years and then 5 years of Congress. They were desperately looking out for change, and that was very evident in all the ground reports from across the state, all the three regions combined. So the AAP was invested heavily in the states in the 2017 polls. It did well, but a lot of things changed in the last moment. They ended up getting only 20 seats and emerging as the principal opposition in the state to Congress, which was in a way a big success in many ways. Okay. Then comes 2022 polls. The AAP again invested heavily on Punjab. Their entire machinery, you can say they contested polls in 4 states: Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Goa. You can kind of easily say that more than 3/4 of the resources of the party, in terms of manpower, in terms of money, in terms of time, energy, was invested on Punjab very clearly for months now. So in Punjab, the party pitched itself as the only party which can bring change. So how they did it is they essentially approached people with the Delhi model. The Delhi model essentially is a kind of governance model which focuses on improvement of schools, improvement of the public healthcare system, public transport, better roads, some specific schemes, social welfare schemes, free units of power. That's again has been a very major point blank of the AAP, that 300 unit Bijli Muft. Delhi has 200 unit Bijli Muft. Even during the poll campaigns, you could see some of the how things started changing. At one point, I remember even Akhilesh Yadav in Uttar Pradesh was promising hum bhi 300 unit Bijli Muft denge. Now they changed the discourse in many ways. At one point, we saw even education ministers, deputy CMs of other states coming down and okay, let's have a debate on schools. Let's have a debate on who has better schools. Now there we clearly saw a change in discourse in the past few months in the run-up to the polls. So going back to the Delhi model, the AAP's central poll plank was the Delhi model, and their central idea, the core idea of the strategy of the campaign was very simple. If we have done certain things in Delhi, why can't we take it to other states? Yes, we can. So, to be sure, the Punjab campaign of the party also included a lot of issues which are very specific to Punjab, I would say. I would point out 2 issues. One is putting an end to the drug menace. They have also been talking about brain drain. Essentially, a lot of younger people leaving the state. Why?
Yeah.
Because they do not have jobs. So they spoke about they stressed on unemployment. They stressed on, okay, we need to, set up Punjab as a state. It's a rich state in many ways. It has the potential to generate jobs in primary, secondary, tertiary sectors. Then why are people leaving Punjab? We have to change that. And then they always made it a point to speak about the sacrilege cases. It's important because this has been a problem with the Congress government too. Like even Amarinder Singh in 2017, it was a major swing in his favor because he promised that he'll take action. But then things started changing when people noticed that he was not acting on those cases for whatsoever reasons. That was one of the major reasons. So they got the point right. They got the nerve right. Like, okay, if we have to come to Punjab, we have to take up these issues. You cannot come to Punjab without ever talking about farmers. So the Aam Aadmi Party very specifically spoke about farmers. That will have certain subsidies for farmers, will have incentives for farmers, though they haven't really clearly chalked out some agriculture policies as of now, but they have clearly stated that they plan to do so. So in Punjab, as far as their Delhi model, why not in Punjab agenda is concerned, they made sure that they appeal to a range of vote bases in terms of they had things to tell women that what we mean, when we say badlav, what it means to you, what it could potentially mean to you, right? So they appeal to the younger generation with, kind of very specific agendas of jobs. There will be jobs, there will be schools. They appeal to the older people, they appeal to farmers, they appeal to different interest groups. That was the part of their, a very, very core part of their campaign strategy throughout. So Badlav was the key. They based themselves on Badlav. Their primary poll plank was, we have a Delhi model. You have seen, like, people come to Delhi to take treatment. They get themselves admitted in government hospitals. They don't have to think twice. Like, okay, I'm unwell, I have to go to a private hospital because the government isn't well. No, in Delhi, you have seen, kind of people do not even hesitate to get their children enrolled in government schools. So this is the kind of badlav we are talking about. We bring it to Punjab. That was the sense. And then they also took certain specific Punjab issues when it comes to Punjab: drugs, people leaving Punjab, unemployment, farmers, and sacrilege cases. And they always made it a point to appeal to a wide range of vote bases. Sure. I think that worked in favor of them, evidently.
I mean, talking about the AAP and how it used the Delhi model, whether it was unemployment, like you said, or, improving schools. I mean, just like, let's say, veer the conversation back to the two earlier party, to the two historical parties in the state, let's say the Congress and the SAD. The Congress, do you think the strategy backfired of, let's say, after Captain Amrinder's exit, of then appointing, a Dalit CM in Mr. Channi, who's now actually trailing in both the constituency seats he stood from, as well as Sidhu also trailing. So, I mean, what is it? I mean, in terms of just understanding, here are two parties which have a very strong vote base and have, let's say, support groups. And right now we're seeing the AAP doing very well in the Malwa region. It's capturing, which is a substantial region in the state. What is it like? And because in a way they had the advantage, especially with the farmers' protests, did they fail to capture that? Because everything in this stance has fallen short. And also look at, when you're electing or you've put up a Dalit CM, the AAP went very aggressively on the sand mining issues against Channi, saying, like the sacrilege issue, the sand mining issue is aggressively used against Channi. So, I mean, was it a bit of, let's say, the AAP's aggressive strategy, or as well as, let's say, the Congress's incompetencies and inefficiencies to then really capture the narrative in the state?
To this, I would say both. And I would kind of, put it point by point. First, okay, Captain Amarinder Singh steps down. At that point, if you look at Congress, the whole idea of Congress again ended up becoming, okay, it's a party which is having a lot of chaos. It's a party which is having a lot of chaos. We have seen a long phase where we saw Navjot Singh Sidhu taking on Captain. There was clearly a divide in the party. He was making it very clear that, okay, this man can't be the CM. And we have seen the Gandhis backing Sidhu.
Yeah.
Captain, then and then we see the Congress appointing Mr. Chandy, who is a prominent Dalit leader from the state, as the new CM. Then we again see Mr. Sidhu having conflicts, very clear conflicts with Mr. Chani, and even taking digs at him every now and then. And the conflict was clear. So by and large, Congress kind of got embroiled in this whole perception of, okay, it's a party which definitely has chaos at the core of it. There is a huge difference of ideas, people, and one thinks that the other can't rule. So
I mean, just to cut you short, is that also one of the reasons, because of the chaos, to then veer towards the AAP in that sense?
It's definitely one of the reasons, yes. And then it contributed to the perception that if the party is so chaotic, I mean, if they come to government, if they come to power, definitely it will have problems. That's definitely a point. There was an anti-incumbency very clearly, but this kind of factors definitely contributed to the anti-incumbency mood. Why the SAD was not an option in this case? Because Punjab has already given a chance to SAD for many years. So in 2017, they were already fed up of SAD. They saw Congress also as an alternative, because the SAD had then, the Akalis had then ruled Punjab for 10 years. They also saw an alternative in the Congress. Now they're also done with the Congress. Now who else? The only alternative available in the whole political canvas of the state was the Aam Aadmi Party.
Sure.
The Aam Aadmi Party, in its initial whole campaign, interestingly, had kind of decided to go aggressively against captain. So if you look at the initial campaign of the party with regard to Punjab before captain sat down, definitely the crux of the campaign was to attack captain's elitism in many ways. He belonged to the elite, he is part of the elites.
The fact that he didn't step out of his farmhouse.
All those points, and as long as he'll be an elite, so he has kind of delegated his entire governance to the bureaucrats, and that is why there is so much of corruption. Also, he's elite, he's not on the ground, so he will never be in a position to get the problems of the common people, the non-elites, the poor, the marginalized, and so these problems are going to persist. So comes September 2021, captain steps down, there's a lot of chaos in Congress. Then Congress came up with a googly of its own. They appointed Mr. Chandy as the CM of the Dalit phase. Now that actually, we did a piece on it in December that actually put the AAP in a fix, because they had to change a lot of their campaign strategies in the last.
The rhetoric had to change in that way.
Now the whole idea of attacking captain's elitism was gone, because now the opponent was a Dalit phase. They definitely had to change their campaign strategies in many ways. So now they broadly categorize their campaign strategies in 3 parts. A, we'll continue with our positive campaign no matter what. We'll continue telling people that there is a Delhi model. If you could do it in Delhi, then why not Punjab? Number 2, we saw that the early days following the appointment of Mr. Chandy triggered some kind of a competition between Kejriwal and Chandy. Is like, who is more arm of an Aam Aadmi? Like, who is the more common man? Like,
more of the masses.
So, and then at one point they also do, okay, only this will probably not help. So what we should also do, we should also always do things to ensure that, we are, to ensure that some kind of scam, some kind of corruption, they ensured that the idea of taking on corruption is always part of their campaign. And that's the reason why they tried to create, and they did so to a large extent, a perception that, see, no matter you have a Dalit CM, but it's not that he's free of corruption. He's as much capable of corruption. At one point, even when the BJP, when the agencies, when the central agencies send notices to the relatives of Mr. Chandy, we saw Kejriwal, kind of encouraging that. Yeah, good thing, because he was, there's a corruption happening, and we have always been flagging that, because he thought that would act in his favor. And so these are the multiple factors. Yes, definitely there was chaos in Congress that contributed. Number 2, people were fed up of the SAD, and that's primarily the reason why they voted for the Congress in the first place in 2017. And number 3, AAP was in a fix, but clearly they overcame, and They did
So
well.
we have a few viewer questions coming in, and this actually follows up from what you just explained right now. Let's say in the AAP lead, I mean, this is from Madhu Kumar, who's already assumed that the AAP is coming to power. I mean, trends show that. But so then, would you say she who's asking that between poll management and policies, what favored the AAP more? Because here, like you said, it's a multi-pronged approach where you're looking across. Let's say you're expressing your own policies of using the Delhi model of governance, as well as then the fight for who's the more common man, and hitting out at the corruption and scams. But what do you think aided the party more?
Uh, yeah, it would be a very difficult choice to pinpoint. Say, yeah, this is more. I mean, see these both things actually complement each other when it comes to elections. Like, you may have strong policies, but if you don't take your policies door to door, and to be sure, Punjab is again a very tough state in that way,
Yeah.
compared to Delhi. Like, Delhi is more of an urban state. It's more of a youth city state. It's easier to take messages door to door. It's smaller. Punjab has a wide rural belt. It's a difficult task to take a message door to door. So, see, at the end of the day, any party can have a very good policies in place, but if the policies are not communicated well, if the policies are not taken door to door, it doesn't make much sense, because at the end of the day, people may end up not knowing about your good policies. To ensure that the message goes door to door, you need to have a very good poll management system in place. You need to have your grassroots level people in place. You need to have booth management system in place. You need to have district management systems in place. So I think both these factors complement each other for any party in almost all states.
Sure.
It would be a tough choice to say which one's more important than the other.
Sure. We have another question from Praveen Kumar Singh, and if it's too who's asking, what will be the AAP model of governance in Punjab now? I mean, when it does, let's say, assume or form the government, what will be the model of governance? Is it too soon to talk about it, because it can't directly replicate what it's doing in there's one thing in terms of campaigning and saying that, hey, we'll get the Delhi model of governance to Punjab, but Punjab has its own, let's say, politics, its cultural intricacies. What kind of a model of governance would it follow? Because we've seen in the run-up to these campaigns, let's see that Bhagwat Mann has assumed a more silent role as opposed as Mr. Kejriwal, who is more forthcoming and vocal. So will that also, let's say, play a role in the way governance is also played out?
Yeah. So a few things here. So AAP indeed will face some new challenges, definitely some new challenges in Punjab. For instance, it has been in the government in Delhi. Now, Delhi doesn't have a prominent rural economy. Delhi doesn't have the issue. I mean, Delhi does have the issue of national security, but that's mostly taken care of by the central government, because Delhi, in Delhi, public order, land, police, this kind of
multiple sources of power
so Delhi is a complicated affair when it comes to governance. He doesn't have the police with him in Delhi. Now, for the first time, he'll be having police. He'll have to have police.
Correct. Exactly.
He doesn't have clear policies on affirmative policies, like, on reservations. He doesn't have clear stand, definitely, on a lot of things. And this will be really untouched, like new domains for him. And the next few months will be very interesting, to see how he navigates these domains. Is going to be interesting. As far as how the AAP, I think, like, going by their campaign strategies so far, and talking to most ministers who are close to Mr. Kejriwal in Delhi, it looks like they'll start with things that they can easily do. They'll start with a few things on things they're experienced at, and take their own time in, kind of getting some more experience in the new domain. So that when they come to power, they're definitely going to start with some of the things that they're already good at, like schools, better hospitals, better roads, some of the things. So it's like a very, very mixed bag kind of a thing. It's full of surprises, because when they come.
But it'll be interesting to see, will the orders be coming from Delhi, let's say from Kejriwal, or will, let's say, Bhagwat Mann, I mean, he's a CM candidate, let's say, would he have more of an assertive role? Because we saw this campaign, he was a lot more mellowed. Like I said, the campaign was being fronted by Kejriwal. I mean, will that also play out in, let's say, in the governance aspect of it?
Two things. First, there's definitely a public perception that, Mr. Mann can end up being a proxy CM. And also Mr. Mann clearly acknowledges that. Why I say so? Because in the last phase of his campaign, when he was visiting village to village, he invested a lot in convincing people that he'll be an independent chief minister, leader of the state, no matter what. Now, that means that there was something, I mean, to clear the air about, right? And that's primarily the reason why he thought it's important to address, this issue at the earliest. So there's definitely a public perception that this could happen. What turns out in the next few months, that would be really interesting, because the Punjab unit, because AAP in Punjab has in the past seen some kind of divides, largely centered around the idea of control, like who controls the unit. After the 2017 polls, the AAP in Punjab clearly witnessed a divide in terms of a Punjab unit and a Delhi unit. The Punjab unit seeking more autonomy in many ways, like we need to be independent, we need to take our own decisions, and the Delhi unit kind of seeking more control in the sense that, see, we know how to do things in a different way, and you come from Punjab where traditional parties have been in power, it can be difficult for you. So we think this is good for you, and the Punjab unit telling, we know what's good for us. Let us work our way. We have seen this happen. We have seen camps within the AAP. And then there have been a lot of negotiations within the AAP in the last 3 years, between 2019 and 2022. So we can't say that there's no, it can't happen in the future. Anything's possible. But yeah, definitely that's a factor. There's a perception. And Mr. Bhagwant Mann, when he becomes a CM, he has to really invest a lot in clearing that perception, because as long as this issue of people perceiving him as the CM proxy for Mr. Kejriwal from Delhi, they'll always have this doubt over his governance models.
Yeah.
Right. Anything goes wrong, they may come and say that no, it went wrong because you're not doing it on your own, you're getting orders. So definitely in the next.
And what even goes right would not be credited to him then, in that sense.
To him, that would be unfair in many ways.
Yeah. Abhishek, right now with these results coming in, Raghav Chadha, who's campaigned extensively in Punjab, said that the BJP will emerge as, let's say, a national AAP will emerge as a national alternative to the BJP. There's another state later on in this year going to pose Gujarat. How will this play out? Will they seem like Gujarat is obviously a completely different domain, but in the elections to come, in the run-up to 2024, is it too soon to, let's say AAP emerging as an alternative to the BJP, looking at these numbers?
In this case, I would rather take a call and say it's not too soon, because why? I say AAP at this point happens to be the only regional party to have two states. Like if you consider Delhi, whatever is a half state, it doesn't have full statehood, but still it has an elected assembly in place. And Punjab, no regional party in the country has two states. National parties have more than one state, but AAP happens to be the regional party. And then you also have to see that, okay, a lot of efforts we can see on regional leaders across the country trying to build up some sort of a regional opposition front. Interestingly, so far, Mr. Kejriwal has been out of it. So far. Now, it would be very interesting to see how things take shape in the days to come, because now Mr. Kejriwal, has more number of states than other regional leaders who have been so far leading the initiative to form this regional front to take on the BJP in 2024 polls. Secondly, Mr. Kejriwal has two states. So definitely what would stop him from, kind of branding himself as the lead, like as the face of the opposition? He may take his own time in doing so. He may take his own, sweet time in doing so. He's also very ambitious about Gujarat. The party is heavily invested in Gujarat. The party is also contesting municipal polls in Bombay. I mean, they are leaving, kind of no territory unexplored. They're doing it all.
And these are aggressive campaigns. Like, it's not like just going there on campaigning for the sake of it. They're aggressive campaigns.
Absolutely. These are prominent campaigns. They're aggressively campaigning in these states. So it's not wrong to assess that definitely the AAP is emerging as a national force, and they have been very open about this idea from the very beginning. Like when they started as a party in 2012, if you remember, their whole plan was, okay, the country has been run primarily by the Congress for decades, and then we have seen the BJP come to power. These are big parties, but then the same old problems persists. There are there's hunger, there's inequality, there's poverty, there's there's no jobs.
Yeah.
There's no development, and
like education and unemployment is a model which could, let's say, be used across pan states in that sense. I mean, obviously, it has to change, let's say, within its politics and the cultural intricacies, but it is it's a prevalent problem across states in that sense.
Across states in that sense, correct. So the arm has always been talking about, we clearly see that there's a political vacuum, and there's a need to immediately fill up that political vacuum. And in the coming time, we will try to emerge as that alternative which fills up that political vacuum. So they have been very clear about their national ambitions, their ambitions to expand. Their ambitions to expand have in the past faced many obstacles when they did not do well in many of the other polls, but they've always done good in Delhi. So we have always seen AAP kind of giving a new push to its national ambitions after each Delhi election. So after the 2020 Delhi elections, which they won for the second time with a huge majority, 62 seats out of 70 is a huge majority, and that for the second time. They were very clear about contesting polls, heavily investing in Punjab again, and contesting polls in 6 states, which include the Gujarat, which includes Himachal, which includes UP, which they did, Uttarakhand, Goa. So definitely they plan to go national. They are, and it would be wrong to say that they are not emerging as a national force, because they are. With Punjab in the kitty, they have 2 states. They are, and also both the states.
Yeah, so I'm just going to cut you short because we have a bunch of viewer questions coming and we also have to wrap up. So to take your point forward with what you're saying as well. So we have one question asking, which follows up from what you're saying, that wouldn't it be different had the AAP won a considerable number of seats in Goa and Uttarakhand, as it would have been seen as a more serious contender among the opposition? Let's say if a front is being formed for 2024, had they, let's say, as per trends right now, they got more seats in Goa and Uttarakhand. In Goa, there was a very aggressive campaign. Would it be seen as more of a serious contender, or do you think it doesn't, it doesn't matter that much as of now?
The more the better. I mean, there's no challenging that idea. The more the better, definitely. But
the question is how much of an impact I think the viewers trying to ask.
It definitely would have made more impact. But we again have to see, they won Punjab, and Punjab happens to have more number of seats. Like, it's a bigger state than Goa or Uttarakhand. So Punjab is a considerable win. I mean,
and it's also closer to Delhi, like you said, Punjab is a very.
Also, more than that, Punjab is very much part of the mainland political narrative of India. You have Punjab, you are part of the mainland discourse as a leader, and that's an advantage actually Mr. Kejriwal has over other leaders like Mamata Banerjee and KCR, who are also leading that opposition front.
That's actually an interesting point, that he has more of a advantage in that sense because it's a part of mainland politics vis-a-vis a KCR, or let's say, I mean, we don't know about Mamata Banerjee right now. So thank you so much. We have more questions coming in, which I'm sure Abhishek can answer later on Twitter or otherwise. So we'll end this live broadcast. We'll have many more throughout the day as results keep, let's say, churning in. Stay tuned to the Print's YouTube channel and other social media handles. Thank you. Thanks, Abhishek.
Thank you.